Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Amy Sam. I am the Health Education Project Specialist at the Maxwell and Eleanor Blum Patient Family Learning Center at Mass General. Maria, would like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you. My name is Maria, and I'm a public health intern at the Blum Center.
Thank you. Before we get started, I just want to go a few items with you all. Please note that today's session is being recorded for educational purposes. If you're interested in viewing the recording, they'll be made available on the Blum Center website at massgeneral.org/Blum-Center. Please note that you are in listen-only mode. Everyone has muted so you can hear our guest speaker today. If you have any questions for our guest speaker, you may use the chat feature, which is located at the bottom of your screen. We'll have time from the end. Only Blum Center staff and our guest speaker will see your questions. Please do not share any personal medical information or questions in the chat. If you have a personal medical question, please ask your doctor. Lastly, at the end of today's session, you've directed to a brief survey, which we'd like to ask you to help us complete. Your feedback is important to us as we plan future programs. Okay, so next I'm going to turn it over to Maria, who will introduce you all today's guest speaker.
Thank you. I would like to welcome Dr. Lisa LaRowe today. Dr. LaRowe is a clinical psychologist and health behavior researcher in the Mognan Institute Center for Aging and Serious Illness and Division of Palliative Care and Geriatric Medicine at Massachusetts General Hospital. She conducts research focused on understanding and promoting health behavior change among midlife and older adults. The ultimate goal of her work is to optimize the well-being and quality of life of aging adults. In recognition of Healthy Aging Month, she joins us today in giving a talk on exercise and aging. Everyone, please join me in welcoming Dr. LaRowe.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right. Well, thank you again for the introduction, and thank you all for attending this webinar today. I'm so excited to be here and to have this opportunity to talk to you about the importance of exercise as we age. And before we jump in, I'd like to take just a brief moment to define some key terms that you're going to hear a lot about during this presentation. Physical activity is defined as any movement of the body that requires energy. This can include everyday tasks like walking the dog, gardening, or even cleaning the house. So essentially, it's anything that gets your body moving. On the other hand, exercise is a more specific subtype of physical activity. So it's planned, structured, and repetitive, and it's usually done for the purpose of improving or maintaining fitness. Exercise includes things like going for a run or lifting weights because you're usually doing these activities with a specific fitness goal in mind. And as you'll hear about more very shortly, both physical activity and exercise contribute to your overall health and well-being. So now that we've defined those two key terms, let me tell you a little bit more about what we're going to cover over the next hour. First, we'll start with a brief overview of the benefits of exercise as we age, and then we'll also discuss some of the benefits of exercise for people with chronic health conditions like dementia, hypertension, and type 2 diabetes, since many of these conditions can become more common when we age. Next, we'll talk about some specific exercise recommendations, both for adults in general, as well as for those who are age 65 and older. And then we'll talk about how to get started with exercise, which I know can feel really overwhelming, especially if you haven't exercised in a while. So I'll cover some simple and practical ways to ease into an exercise routine that suits your needs and goals. And finally, we'll discuss ways to stay motivated for exercise. We know it's one thing to get started, but sticking with your exercise plan can be really challenging. So I'll share some tips and strategies to help you stay consistent and enjoy the process. So let's start by talking about the benefits. Exercise has numerous different benefits as we age, both for our physical health and for our mental well-being as well. There are actually so many benefits of exercise that I won't have time to describe them all in this short presentation, but I do want to highlight a few especially important ones. So studies show that exercise can help to keep our brains healthy as we get older and can reduce the risk of developing dementia. One study even found that cognitive decline is almost twice as likely among adults who are inactive compared to those who engage in regular activity. So engaging in regular activity is incredibly important for keeping our brains healthy. Exercise also has a really great effect on improving mood. It's been shown to reduce symptoms of anxiety and depression, and some people even notice benefits after just a single exercise session. Another important benefit of exercise is that it improves sleep quality, and this is especially important as we age and our sleep patterns may change. It has important cardiovascular benefits too. It helps to lower blood pressure and can reduce the risk of serious conditions like heart disease, stroke, and type 2 diabetes. It also improves bone health by reducing bone density loss. This is especially important for preventing things like osteoporosis, and it can help to keep us strong and more resilient as we age. It's also been shown to help support a healthy immune system and can reduce the risk for developing certain types of cancers, including bladder, breast, colon, endometrium, esophagus, kidney, lung, and stomach cancer. As we get older, balance and coordination can become even more important, and exercise can help to improve both. This can reduce the risk for falls and fall-related injuries, which are common concerns for many older adults. And finally, exercise can help us live independently for longer. It helps to maintain our mobility, our strength, and the ability to manage our own daily tasks. So as you can see, the benefits extend well beyond just fitness. Exercise nearly impacts every aspect of health and quality of life as we age. And in addition to preventing the development of many different chronic and serious health conditions, exercise also is a really helpful component of managing many of these conditions. So in people with dementia, exercise has been shown to improve cognition. By improving blood supply and nutrients getting to the brain, exercise can help with things like thinking skills and memory. In people with hypertension, exercise can prevent blood pressure from increasing over time, and it can reduce the progression of cardiovascular disease. In people with type 2 diabetes, exercise has been shown to improve really important markers of diabetes progression, things like A1C levels, blood pressure, body mass index, and lipid levels. In people with osteoarthritis, exercise can improve pain and physical functioning and can help to increase quality of life. And in cancer survivors, exercise has also been shown to improve overall fitness levels and quality of life. All of the research shows us that exercise is a really important tool for us to use, since it can both prevent the development of chronic and serious conditions, and it can be a really important component of managing these conditions as we age. So what are the exercise recommendations for aging adults? Well, let's take a look at the national recommendations for exercise. For all adults, it's recommended that we incorporate both aerobic exercise and muscle strengthening exercises into our routine to support our overall health and fitness. For older adults or those who are over the age of 65, it's also really important to incorporate balance training. So by combining these three different types of exercise, we can create a well-rounded fitness routine that supports our overall health, mobility, and independence as we age. So let's talk a little bit more about the specific recommendations for each of these different activities. And we'll start with aerobic exercise. So the national guidelines recommend aiming for at least 150 minutes of moderate intensity activity or 75 minutes of vigorous intensity activity each week. You can also do some combination of both moderate and vigorous activities. And when you're doing a combination of moderate and vigorous intensity exercise, every 1 minute of moderate intensity exercise is considered to be about the same as 2 minutes of moderate intensity activity. So in other words, you can think of vigorous exercise as counting for twice as much as moderate exercise. So every 1 minute of vigorous exercise counts as 2 minutes of moderate exercise. So if you do 30 minutes of vigorous exercise, that counts for 60 minutes of moderate intensity exercise. If your schedule includes a mix of both intensities, you can use this rule to track your weekly total and make sure that it adds up to at least 150 minutes per week. We also know that additional health benefits come from doing even more than 150 minutes per week. So how do you know if you're doing moderate intensity or vigorous intensity activity? Well, you can use the talk test. So as a general rule of thumb, a person doing moderate intensity exercise can talk, but not sing during the activity. Whereas a person doing vigorous intensity exercise can't say more than just a few words without pausing for a breath. So let's take a look at some activities that might fall under each category. And these are some examples of moderate intensity activities. There are things like brisk walking, dancing, swimming, and even some yard work counts. Again, these are things that get your heart rate up enough so that you can't sing, but you still could carry on a conversation. And here are some examples of vigorous intensity activities. These are things like jogging or running, competitive sports like tennis or basketball, and fast cycling. So these are things that increase your heart rate so much that you probably can't say them more than just a few words without pausing for a breath. Now let's talk about muscle strengthening exercise. These activities are important for maintaining and improving skeletal muscle strength, power, endurance, and muscle mass, especially as we age. It's recommended that you do these activities at least 2 days per week. It's also important to note that these activities should target all major muscle groups, including your legs, your hips, your back, abdomen, chest, shoulders, and your arms. A well-rounded program ensures that you're building balanced strength throughout your body to help support better mobility, function, and injury prevention. These activities often involve lifting relatively heavy objects, such as weights, multiple times to strengthen different muscle groups. Muscle strengthening activity can also be done using elastic bands or body weight for resistance, so things like doing push-ups, for example. Even things like carrying groceries or taking the stairs can help to build and maintain muscle. There are 3 key components when it comes to muscle strengthening exercises that I want you all to keep in mind. The first is intensity, and this refers to how much weight or force you're using. So the heavier the weight or the more resistance you use, the higher the intensity of the exercise. It's important to choose a weight or resistance that challenges you, but still feels manageable for your fitness level. Frequency refers to how often you do the activity. And as we mentioned on the last slide, national recommendations suggest doing muscle strengthening activity at least twice per week. And finally, sets and repetitions refer to how often you do the activity, or how many times you perform the activity. So for example, if you're doing a strength exercise like squats or bicep curls, you might do 2 to 3 sets of 8 to 12 repetitions each. So the idea is to challenge your muscle repeatedly to promote strength and endurance. And finally, let's talk about balance training. This is particularly important for older adults. Balance training refers to activities that can improve the ability to resist forces within us or outside of us that can cause falls. So it's important to do these activities at least 3 days per week. Some examples of balance training activities include walking backwards or even sideways or walking heel to toe. Balance training might also include practicing standing on one leg or using a wobble board. Both of these activities can be done while holding onto a chair if you're feeling unsteady. Yoga is another great balance activity, as well as Tai Chi, which is a mind-body exercise that's been shown to improve balance. It's also helpful to think about how you can incorporate multi-component activities into your exercise routine. These are activities that include more than one type of physical activity, such as aerobic, muscle strengthening, and balance training, all in one. So recreational activities such as dancing, yoga and Tai Chi, gardening, or sports can all be considered multi-component activities because they often incorporate multiple types of physical activity. For example, yoga and Tai Chi can help us to strengthen our muscles and improve our balance all at the same time. Sports and gardening might provide aerobic activity and can help to strengthen our muscles. So these activities all target different components of physical activity all at the same time. There are some special guidelines that I want to point out. If you're 65 years of age or older and have chronic conditions, it's important to talk with your healthcare professional to determine whether your conditions limit your ability to do regular physical activity. It's also important to focus on being as physically active as your abilities and conditions allow, even if you can't do 150 minutes of moderate intensity aerobic activity a week because of your chronic conditions. So always remember that some physical activity is better than none. Older adults who do not yet do the equivalent of 150 minutes of moderate intensity activity a week can still gain health benefits by doing small amounts of activity. In addition, swapping out sedentary behavior such as sitting for light intensity physical activity like light housework, for example, have been shown to provide some health benefits. So how do we get started with exercise? Well, the most important thing that I want you to take away from this presentation is that it's never too late to start. And as I've mentioned on prior slides, it is always a good idea to talk to your doctor first, especially if you have a health problem like heart disease, diabetes, or obesity. You can ask them different questions that can guide you in terms of how to get active. And those questions can include things like, how can being active help me as I age? What activities would you recommend for me? Are there any exercises or activities that I should avoid? Can you refer me to a trained physical activity specialist, like a physical therapist or a personal trainer? And will the medicine I'm taking affect how my body responds to exercise? It's also important that you always tell your doctor if you have any shortness of breath, chest pain, or unplanned weight loss. After you've talked to your doctor and you're ready to start, the most important thing is that you start slowly if you were not physically active before or if you haven't been physically active in a while. Even 5 minutes of exercise can have health benefits, and you can build up to more over time. So I encourage you to take some time to find your starting point. You can use a document like this one, which is available from the National Institute on Aging, to track your normal activity levels for a few days. Try to choose a couple of days during the week to track your activity levels, and then one day on the weekend. Then go back and look at what your normal activities were over those days, and think about ways that you can slowly start to increase your activity. For example, is there a day when maybe you can incorporate a short walk to increase the amount of moderate intensity activity that you're getting? When you get started with exercise, always make sure to warm up before the exercise session and cool down afterwards. And be sure to drink plenty of water before, during, and after your session. Let's talk about some sample weekly schedules to help you think about what you might aim for in terms of working up to meeting the guidelines. So you could aim to do moderate intensity aerobic exercise. And remember, that's exercise when you can talk, but not sing, for 150 minutes per week. And you can achieve that by going for a brisk walk for 30 minutes on 5 days during the week. You can also add in some muscle strengthening activities like push-ups, squats, lunges, bicep curls on 2 days per week. And then add in balance activities like walking heel to toe or backwards or standing from a sitting position on 3 days per week. Alternatively, you could do vigorous intensity aerobic exercise. So exercise when you can't say more than just a few words without pausing for a breath for 75 minutes during the week. And you can achieve that by going for a 25-minute run 3 times per week. You still want to make sure that you're adding in 2 days of muscle strengthening exercises and 3 days of balance activities. And finally, you could do a combination of moderate and vigorous intensity exercise, remembering that vigorous exercise counts for twice the amount of moderate exercise minutes. So for example, you could go for a 25-minute run, which counts for 50 minutes of moderate intensity exercise. And then you could go for 2 50-minute walks to meet your total goal for the week. Again, it's always important to also incorporate those 2 days of muscle strengthening and 3 days of balance activities as well. So now that you've gotten started with exercise, let's talk about how to stay motivated. One of the most important keys to exercise success is goal setting. Setting goals will help keep you on track, let you see the bigger picture, and help you get back on track when life throws you curveballs. So to help stay motivated to achieve goals, make sure that you set your own exercise goals. You'll be far more successful with exercise if you make your goals personalized to you and your life. So think about what you want to accomplish. And when you're setting an exercise goal, try to use the SMART goal framework. This means that your goals should be specific. Avoid goals like exercise more or get in shape, and instead set specific goals like, I want to walk 150 minutes per week. You also want to make sure that your goals are measurable. This could be with an amount of time for aerobic exercise goals, like I want to walk 30 minutes each weekday, or it could be a number, for example, a number of repetitions for a strength goal, like I want to be able to do 5 push-ups, or I want to do 2 push-ups a day. You can also have a number of balance sessions, for example. So I want to go to 3 different yoga classes per week. You just want to make sure that you can count how many and measure your progress towards the goal. Also make sure that your goal is achievable. Remember when I said that it's important to start slow? If you haven't been active recently, it wouldn't be a good idea to have a goal of meeting the exercise recommendations right away. But it might be more attainable to set a goal of going for 2 15-minute walks around the block in the next week. If we have unrealistic goals, they can often lead to frustration and disappointment. So we want to choose something that will bring us closer to our bigger picture goals, but is an attainable first step. We also want to make sure that the goal is relevant to our bigger picture values and objectives. If your bigger picture goal is to maintain strength as you age, your SMART goal should include some muscle strengthening activity in order to be relevant to that bigger goal. And finally, our goals should be time-based. Going back to the push-up goal, sure, we could say that our goal is to do 5 push-ups, but this would be much more powerful as a motivator for exercise if we set a date by which we want to accomplish this. So for example, I might say, I want to be able to do 5 push-ups by January 1st. To keep motivated for our goals, it can also be helpful to include some longer term goals. For example, you might say, I want to be able to run a 5K or reduce my blood pressure or maintain a healthy weight. So these bigger goals can then be divided up into smaller goals. Every time you exercise, you can picture it pushing you a little bit closer to your bigger, longer term goals. It's also important to make sure you write down your goals. When you write them down, you'll remember them and you'll have a clearer idea of what your goals are. I also encourage you to post them in a highly visible area, such as the refrigerator or maybe on your bathroom mirror, somewhere where you're going to see it often and continue to be reminded of that goal. It's also important to make a plan of how you will stay on track and accomplish your goals. Think about what activities you will be doing each day, when you'll find the time for them, where you will do them, and who you will be doing them with. Scheduling them with this level of detail ahead of time can really be helpful for prioritizing them. If we don't make a plan and we don't make room in our calendars for them in advance, competing responsibilities can often fill up our time and then exercise gets pushed aside. So by scheduling them, we remind ourselves that they're a priority, and then we can find ways to adjust our other responsibilities around exercise so that we're more likely to stick to our exercise goals. There's also some tools available online to help make an exercise plan. The Move Your Way activity planner is one of them, so I do encourage you to check that out. Self-monitoring is another important key to staying motivated for exercise. So this involves tracking and recording physical activity and exercise throughout the week. There's several different ways to do this. A lot of people like using devices, so things like pedometers, wearable trackers like Fitbits or Garmin devices, or even your phone can often track the number of steps you get and the amount of activity that you do. However, if you don't want to use one of the devices, you can also just write it down. Lots of people record their activity in a physical activity log or journal, or use a worksheet to fill out what they did that week. There's plenty of templates available online for free. Or you could just write down on a piece of paper the day, what you did, and for how long, like is shown in the table here on the slide. And let's face it, sometimes exercise can be boring, especially if you're doing the same routine every day. But if you keep it fun and interesting, it can become something that you look forward to and not something that you dread. So let's talk about some tips for beating boredom. Workout buddies are a really great way to get in activity while also having some fun. Working out in partnerships or in groups can help people stay motivated and can help take your mind off the fact that you're exercising. It's also a time when you can talk about things going on in your life and really de-stress. Changing social engagements is also a great way to get fitter without necessarily taking time away from your friends and family. So for example, instead of going out to dinner or grabbing a coffee with a friend or a family member, ask them to go for a walk or try a new exercise class instead. You can also consider asking your spouse, friend, children, or even a neighbor to join you for a workout to help keep things more enjoyable. Watching something on TV is another way that you can beat boredom. Lots of people spend lots of time watching TV or movies instead of exercising, so why not combine them and do them both at the same time? If you're at the gym, most gyms have TVs, so you know when your favorite show is going to be on, and you can make time to go to the gym during that time where your show will be aired. A lot of gyms have Wi-Fi too, so if you have a smartphone or tablet, you can watch your favorite shows online, like on Netflix, while you're on the treadmill or stationary bike even. So pick a series that you love and only let yourself watch it while you're exercising. You can also listen to something fun to make the time go by more quickly. Again, find something that you enjoy and only let yourself listen to it while you're exercising. This will add some extra motivation to get out there and exercise. You can try listening to things like podcasts, audiobooks, or even just your favorite songs. It's also important to try to do a variety of things to make exercise more enjoyable. Try new things like different sports, classes, or walking even in new places, and mix up the activities that you're doing throughout the week. In order to stay motivated for exercise, it's also important to be prepared to overcome barriers to exercise. So let's take a few minutes to go through some common barriers to exercise and different strategies we can use to overcome them. So for example, a lot of people tell me that they don't have a gym nearby, or they don't want to purchase a gym membership, and that this prevents them from meeting their exercise goals. But there's still many ways to incorporate exercise into your life, even without a gym. So think about ways that you can add physical activity to your day without equipment. For example, you could garden, dance, play with your children or grandchildren. You can also consider walking or bicycling to do errands. And look online. In addition to finding full workouts that you can do right at home, there's also countless guided exercise programs available online, often for free, that you can do in the comfort of your own home. So you can find these on websites like YouTube or on different mobile apps or even TV. If you're feeling unsure about how to get started with muscle strengthening activities, I encourage you to ask if your local gym or community facility offers demonstrations of the muscle strengthening equipment. Most gyms will do this for free, walk you through the different equipment that they have and show you how to use it. You can also consider working with a personal trainer, either individually or in a small group, to learn proper form and engage in activity with personalized guidance. And again, look online. There's many different free online videos that demonstrate specific exercises. Just make sure that they're coming from a reliable source. For example, Mass General has guides online to walk you through different strengthening exercises. So you can look for things like these. If the weather gets in the way, so if it's too hot to walk outside like it was most of this past summer, or if it's raining or snowing or too cold to get outdoors, try going for a walk at a mall or even in a grocery store or a big box store like Walmart or Home Depot. And again, there's many online fitness programs that can be done right inside your home. So try one of those if you can't go outside because of the weather. Costs are often described as a major barrier to exercise, especially to doing things like muscle strengthening activities, which some people think requires an expensive gym membership. But as we've talked about, there's many free online resources that show you ways to be active and build muscle strength right at home. So again, think about trying YouTube muscle strengthening workouts or yoga videos available online. You can also work with a physical therapist or other clinician who can help you design an effective exercise program with items you might find at home. For example, you can use books or laundry detergent jugs for muscle strengthening activities. There's also many activities that you can do just using your body weight. So things like push-ups, body weight squats, lunges, or abdominal exercises. And what do you do on days when you have low energy levels or feel especially fatigued? It can be really challenging to motivate yourself to exercise on these days. But the good news is that exercise can actually help us feel more energized. Try to plan your exercise during periods of the day when you feel most energized. For example, some people, this might be in the morning, first thing, but for others, it might be later in the afternoon or evening. So it can be helpful to track your energy levels for a few days and then try to plan your sessions at times where you usually have higher energy levels. Focus on activities that you enjoy. If we're feeling really low energy, it's a lot easier to find the motivation to do something that we really love than to do something that we don't enjoy as much. For example, if you really hate walking on the treadmill, but you love playing pickleball, call up a friend on a low energy day and see if they'd like to play. And remember that starting to move often provides an energy boost. So many people feel less fatigue during and after physical activity. So this can be really helpful to remind ourselves of when we are having those low energy days. Many people also describe pain, including chronic pain, as a major barrier to exercise. The good news is that over time, physical activity can ease chronic pain and help you feel better. If you're recovering from an injury, listen to your doctor and to your body and do what feels right for you. If you're dealing with a more chronically painful condition and your doctor has given you the okay to exercise, start slow. Walking is often a really great way to start. You can also try to focus on activities that minimize discomfort. For example, some people find that things like swimming or water aerobics yoga, Tai Chi, or just simply walking are less uncomfortable than some other higher intensity activities. And again, prioritize activities that you enjoy. A recent study found that among people with chronic pain, how much you enjoy physical activity is a really important predictor of whether or not you stick with physical activity over the time. So especially if you have pain, really focus on those activities that you enjoy. It's also helpful to work with your healthcare providers, like your physical therapist or your pain doctor, to develop a pain management plan that you can use if you do experience some increases in pain with activity. If you're feeling unsteady when you exercise, or if you avoid exercise because you're worried about falling, you can sign up for a group exercise class that includes different balance components with some form of supervision. It's also important to start slow and with activities that you feel most comfortable with. So for example, you might do chair exercises for support with balance, or walk in place to limit trip hazards. Some additional tips are really important to mention for staying motivated to exercise. So first, make sure that you're aware of any urges to quit and give up on your exercise plan, and have a plan to overcome those urges beforehand. You can even write yourself an encouraging letter to read on those extra hard days. Remember that something is better than nothing. If you don't feel like you're doing much, or if you don't feel like you have the energy to do much, just get out there for a 10-minute walk. Chances are, once you get going, you'll want to keep it up. Remember that exercise often helps improve our energy levels. Think about the end of your day. Ask yourself how you will feel if you exercise that day, and how you'll feel if you weren't active at all. Chances are you'll feel a lot better about yourself in your day if some of it was spent moving. So it can be helpful to think forward to that end of the day if we're trying to build our motivation to exercise in the moment. It's also important to make time to reflect on your progress. And this ties back into self-monitoring. If we monitor our progress, then we can look back and see how far we've come. And treat yourself. When you accomplish a goal, reward yourself. Choose things like new shoes, a movie with family, or some new workout clothes to help keep you motivated to continue on with your exercise goals. Thank you all for your attention, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dr. LaRowe. We're now at the end of the session. If you have any questions for Dr. LaRowe, please enter them in the chat. We have a question regarding activity fitness devices such as Fitbit. How helpful are they in keeping track of the different types of exercises?
So those types of devices are great for tracking the number of steps that you get. So they function as pedometers. They also can track specific activities, but usually you have to kind of go into the mobile application and tell it what type of activity that you've done. So you're giving it some of that information. They can also track activity based on your heart rate level. So some devices like Fitbits will count your moderate intensity activity minutes for you based on your heart rate and step data together.
Thank you. Earlier in your presentation, you talked about the benefits of exercise, physical activity. Are there any specific exercises that you recommend in helping to reduce the risk of dementia?
Aerobic exercise has been linked, regular physical activity, including aerobic exercise, has been linked to improvements in brain health. So I think trying to meet those aerobic activity exercises and simultaneously reducing the amount of sedentary time that we have too can be really important for reducing risk of dementia.
Then how about bone health? Any specific exercises for that?
Muscle strengthening exercise is particularly important for bone health. We do also always encourage that multi-component exercise. So things like playing sports or gardening or doing yoga or Tai Chi, a lot of these tap into both that muscle strengthening activity while at the same time helping our aerobic fitness and also having some balance training components. So I think especially for older adults, really focusing on those multi-component activities can be really important.
Thank you. Earlier on, you provide an example of using a wobble board for balance training. Can you provide some more information on that?
Yeah, those are boards that can help you train balance. So if you go see a physical therapist or a personal trainer or a gym sometimes has access to that, you can also purchase them online, but they're devices to help with balance training. You also totally don't need devices. You can, like we talked about, do different balance training activities right at home, not using any sort of special equipment. So practicing standing up from a seated position or walking backwards or heel to toe, standing on one leg. And again, things like yoga or Tai Chi are especially helpful.
Thank you. Are you able to provide some examples on how someone can warm up before exercising?
Yeah, so starting to get your heart rate up slowly is really helpful. So even just going for a light walk or jog can be really helpful. If you're doing muscle strengthening exercises, you can do some different stretches and mobility exercises to help start warming up the body parts that you'll be working. Again, these are things that a personal trainer or a physical therapist can be really helpful for coming up with personalized recommendations. There are also a lot of free resources online for different warm-ups you can do specific to the exercise that you'll be doing.
Thank you. You provided an interesting example of walking backwards. How is that helpful?
So just different activities. Remember, balance training is really about building our ability to keep steady in the face of both internal sort of disruptions to our balance as well as external things. So by walking backwards, that's something that we don't do very often. So it can provide a sort of novel experience for us to make sure that we're able to be steady when faced with those different internal experiences.
Thank you. Do you have any tips on staying active for individuals who use wheelchairs?
There are lots of resources out there on the internet, especially for different chair exercises that can be done. So things like chair yoga, for example, are really fantastic. There is some specialized equipment. So there are they're not really treadmills, but they're arm treadmills. So you can get cardiovascular aerobic activity from a seated position. But those are things that you would have to go for a gym for. But I do encourage chair yoga as a great option.
Thank you. You had mentioned Move Your Way as an activity planner. Do you know if that's free to use?
It is. So that is a free online resource. The link is in the slides. So definitely check that out, or you can just Google it. But it allows you to build a plan based on the different types of activities that you want to do and helps you to make sure that you're meeting those national guidelines.
Wonderful, thank you. I don't see any additional questions in the chat while we wait to see if there are any other questions. Are there any other online resources that you recommend for someone who wants to learn about the different types of activities, how to get started?
Yeah, so I think just going to the CDC website, the National Institute on Aging website, both of those offer really fantastic resources for exercise and physical activity. They have lots of guides for getting started. They go into a lot more detail about the specific benefits of exercise. So I think they're very reputable sources. I think trying to stick to the online resources that we know are coming from trustworthy sources is really important, but the NIA, CDC, and even Mass General has lots of different resources on the website.
Thank you. And for anyone who's interested in those resources that were shared today, feel free to email the Blum Center and we'd be happy to share that with you. I'm going to enter that email in the chat. It's pflc@partners.org. So I don't see any additional questions in the chat, so I think it'd be fine to end a few minutes early, but before we do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share with the audience?
I just hope that you've taken away from this that it is never too late to start exercising. And I know that sometimes it can feel very overwhelming in the beginning, but starting slowly and working your way up can really make such an important impact on your health, both physically and emotionally. And there's lots of different tips and tricks to stay motivated. So I hope that you will take at least one of those and try it over the next week.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. LaRowe, for spending the hour with us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
And for everyone who joined, thank you so much. Hopefully you found today's session helpful. As I had mentioned, today's session is being recorded. It'll be made available on the Blum Center website at massgeneral.org/Blum-Center. Thank you so much, everyone. Take care.